nonprofit organization. Some of you may know the land if you've ever come in to Fit and Green from Cardwell Hills kiosk. You've walked over the Crestmont Land Trust lands, and he's got 172 acres of high quality habitat, and it's near Wren. He's worked with many partners throughout the years to improve habitat on the land. He believes that working lands and conservation are not mutually exclusive, and he's implementing agriculture or agroforestry grazing and using that to improve habitat in an oak savanna. Mary Eichler is a past director of the district. She came to Oregon with a love of nature from New York by visiting an urban park close to her home in New York. She has a passion for wildlife habitat improvements on lands. As I said, she was a board director from 1997 to 2003. For many years, when I started, the native plant sale had been held in her barn for many years prior to my employment, and we continued that for several years. Many of you might remember the tree sale at Mary's barn on Garden Avenue. She also assisted the directors to secure a bright future for the district by getting a tax base. She lives by the motto of do no harm, and she blends conservation principles with managing her lands.
Andy Gallagher, his professional service is in soil classification, and he's been a vital partner during my soil health and prairie soils for sustainable restoration projects. It's always fascinating to join Andy for a day in the with his field work. I love to watch and learn as he describes the secrets of the soil as each layer, each auger bucket is pulled out and into a profile.
Marvin is a local third-generation farmer and a wetland manager. Marvin has such a wealth of on-the-ground knowledge, which he willingly shares with anyone who expresses interest. He has helped Benton SWCD connect with many landowners and has made our programs like the Willamette Mainstem Cooperative so much more successful than they ever could have been without his involvement. And it's always a treat to spend time with Marvin. You're on mute.
So Cliff hardly needs an introduction, but he served with the district for 17 years, and many of those years were as our board chair. Cliff was also instrumental like Mary Eichler in getting the nickel for conservation tax base for the district, and that enables us to have stable funding for our programs. So thank you, Cliff.
Ron is a retired teacher who has maintained an active involvement with many outdoor education programs in Benton County, including the Salmon Watch field trips we coordinate as part of the Lynn Benton Salmon Watch program. Not only does he volunteer to teach at most of the scheduled field trips, he also trains our volunteers, develops new lessons, works with the teachers, attends steering committee meetings, and shows up for our fundraisers. I'm so grateful for Ron.
As a basin team leader for NRCS, Heather oversees conservation work in 9 counties in Western Oregon. She has a passion for helping others, and there's a long list of other organizations that she works with on this slide to attest to that fact. She's especially committed to a group called Unidas, and that is a group of leaders working to institute systems change across Oregon by developing an intergenerational network of established leaders that improve the well-being of all Latinos in Oregon.
Jenny Maisel works for Marion Soil and Water Conservation District in Salem, but she lives here in Corvallis, so we benefit from her wealth of botanical knowledge. Last year, she informed us of 2 plants that are relatively new invaders, and her input led to those weeds being removed by volunteers and professionals. Not only is she making the county healthier, she's saving the community money by helping us find and control weeds while their numbers are still small.
Matt has been instrumental in the Willamette Main Stem projects, working with landowners to remove ivy and restore river habitat. His wife, Serene Melantine, is an environmental educator extraordinaire with a vibrant passion for youth education. They each contribute their own special way in the conservation in Benton County, but together they're a really great team that help out our conservation efforts. Oh, next is me again. I first met Jeff Mitchell at the Newton Creek wetland in Philomath as we were preparing for a youth education event many years ago. And it was so heartwarming to watch Jeff working with his high school students. He passed in 2018, but I will forever remember his wonderful way of bringing out the best in his students and instilling in them his respect and passion about animals, plants, and ecosystems.
Molly Monroe is a naturalist who played a central role in Benton County becoming the first certified community wildlife habitat in Oregon. Molly's home has been a stop on Benton SWCD's native plant garden tour. She's taught at Salmon Watch, and she faithfully points people to our native plant bloom time and color chart. It's so great to have Molly in our community because she cares so much about the plants and animals that we share the planet with. Sorry.
If I had to choose one word to describe Jerry Paul, it would be stewardship. He brings to our board of directors his experience as a steward of the land, of native plants, and of wildlife, perhaps especially bees through the Bee Buddy program. What you may not know is that he's also performing essential and outstanding stewardship of the district's finances as our treasurer. So thank you, Jerry, for taking care of us in our community and organization.
Jane Veale is another wonderful landowner that lives in Benton County, along with her husband, Larry. They bought a 100-acre property along Llewellyn Road, south of Corvallis. They wanted to include habitat restoration on their property, so they invited many, many partners on their property to get advice and look for funding opportunities and help to restore oak savanna, wetland restoration, prairie restoration, riparian restoration as well. We worked with Jane to get a large grant to restore a number of those habitats on their property. We also got fencing to exclude cattle from the riparian area. They planted over 6,000 trees along the stream side. And they also planted native seed for increasing butterfly habitat. Thank you, Jane.
Carrie is a teacher at Garfield Elementary School who became involved with Benton SWCD through Salmon Watch. When Garfield joined the program in 2017, we realized we needed to offer the field trip bilingually. To make that happen, Carrie stepped up and created materials in Spanish for her students, and then she shared the materials so our other Spanish immersion schools could use them too. Carrie's openness and creativity have helped us bring the wonders of salmon to students we couldn't reach before.
Scott Youngblood is the Willamette River Ranger for the State Department of Parks and Recreation. And his area covers a 100-mile stretch of the river. He works tirelessly to steward the natural resources of the region that he serves, working in partnership with dozens of other like-minded organizations. Scott has always shown up for everything we needed him to do, whether that was serving on the steering committee of the Willamette Main Stem Cooperative, conducting aquatic plant surveys on the river. He just always shows up with his boat and himself to help us out. So we simply couldn't do our work on the Willamette Main Stem without Scott. So thank you very much for your can-do attitude, Scott.
Well, I think I'll just say something for this one because nothing's happened. Theresa, I don't know, but I just wanted to put this slide in because it's important to me to let you know that you're all our conservation neighbors, whether you saw your name up there or not. And we really appreciate you and the work you do and the volunteering you do to make the community a better place for the animals, the plants, and the people that we share it with. So thank you, and thanks for being here tonight.
So all of the staff and I don't know if the board is going to introduce themselves. I think Faye's going to introduce the board, but staff will each introduce ourselves briefly. But I just first want to thank the staff. This has just been a challenging year and everybody just really pulled through, and together we figured out how to do the work of the district in a new way. And that was in no small part due to everybody's creativity and dedication to the work of the district. So thank you, staff. I think I'm next. Holly Crossan, Executive Director of the district. And I've been with the district since 2013. You can contact me for anything really, but in particular, our mission, goals, programs, anything to do with the budget or fiscal operations, our policies and procedures. And one of my favorite things about working for the district is knowing that the really hard work that the staff and board do today helps our community be better tomorrow.
Hi, I'm Linda Leavitt, and I've worked as the district's operations manager since October 2019. So you can contact me about board meetings and elections, public records, and general policies and procedures. One of my favorite things about working for the district is just learning about all the great conservation and sustainability work that's going on at the local level, especially when sometimes the news at the national level is pretty grim. So thank you for being here.
You're on mute.
My name is Donna Schmitz, and I was hired with the district in 1999 as a watershed technical specialist was my title at that time. What you can contact me about is if you have any restoration and opportunities on your property, come out and do a site visit, walk around, see what issues you might have, make some recommendations for conservation practices to improve water quality or improve habitat on your property. I also work with Oregon Department of Agriculture on improving agricultural water quality. What inspires me and what I really enjoy about my work with the district is working with the citizens of Benton County to improve conservation on the land.
I'm Theresa Madison. I have worked at the district for 16 plus years, and it's almost a quarter of my life I've been here. I figured out today, since 2004. My job title currently is resource conservationist. I work with Donna on a lot of projects. You can contact me about volunteering for the upcoming 2021 native plant sale. We'll be distributing plants in February. So if you're interested in helping with that, it's going to be really different this year to comply with the COVID restrictions. You can also get a hold of me to learn more about the Willamette Valley Regenerative Landscape Coalition and soil testing. Thanks for joining our meeting.
Hi, everyone. My name is Heathkerst. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I've worked for the district since 2006. My job title now is Communications and Community Engagement Manager. And so you can contact me for help with the native plant sale, for youth education events, field trips, and for I run a couple of grant programs for the district, youth education grants and watershed council support, and also anything to do with outreach and communications. One of my favorite things about working for the district is getting to know the wonderful people who live in Benton County and the flexibility that I have in this position to create new programs and other offerings that address the needs and interests that are expressed by community members like you. I'm so glad to be with you all tonight. And now I'm going to turn it over to our board chair, Faye Yoshihara, to introduce our directors and deliver the financial report.
Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight, and thanks for joining us. And thanks again to our amazing staff who've kept things going in this most unusual year. Zone 1, we have our beekeeper, Henry Storch. Jerry Paul is a former rancher and county planner, and he serves in Zone 3. Graham Trask, our stream restoration specialist, is in Alsea, serving Zone 4. Bob Morris is one of our at-large directors, and he serves as our vice chair. And and he's a retired veterinarian and educator. And Eliza Mason is a microbiologist and farmer in Monroe. We also have 2 associate directors. A longtime Ronna Foster is joined by Sierra Smith, who's our brand new student associate director, a new program that we just started last year. As you can see, we have a vacancy in Zone 5 when Larry Lee resigned last year, but we are very pleased to be able to appoint Carrie Hastings to that position later tonight. I mentioned the associate program because we'd love to have you consider that as a way to learn about the district, what we do, and potentially think about board service. We'll be later tonight adding 2 new associate directors, Marcella Henkels and Nate Johnson. So please contact us if you're interested in knowing more about our board. I'll now move on to our financial review. And we had, again, a very solid year. The district has been stewarded over the last several years towards better and better stability financially. And that's kudos to Holly and her team for continuing to build the strength. And we're a little bit rare in that we are able to leverage our tax base to get grants. Not all districts do this. And so that really gives us the opportunity to do even more for the citizens of Benton County. I will also mention that in this year, Holly really, kudos to Holly for quickly reacting to COVID-19 when it very first began. She got the team together. They very quickly figured out how to work remotely, how to work safely and securely, all of the logistics involved while still providing all the programs and services that you expect from the district, including the native plant sales, which are no small feat. So a big shout out to everyone who has really shown their adaptation, the ability to adapt and be resilient and manage through these unusual times. So big thank you to our team. Back to you.
Thanks, Faye. Now it's my pleasure to introduce tonight's guest speaker, Lauren Pharr, who's been serving as Benton SWCD's guest blogger since July. Lauren is an ornithologist and master's student at North Carolina State University in Raleigh, North Carolina. She's pursuing her degree in fisheries, wildlife, and conservation biology. Her current research focuses on studying and analyzing urbanization effects, specifically urban noise and light pollution on avian species. She's also an engaged science communicator. She's given talks to multiple societies, including Georgia Audubon and Hog Island Audubon, and has written and contributed pieces to a variety of outlets, including the Cincinnati Zoo, National Geographic, BBC Wildlife, and eBird. Lauren is also the recipient of many awards, including funding from both the Alongside Wildlife Foundation, and the North Carolina Wildlife Federation. Thank you for speaking to us tonight, Lauren. I'm going to stop sharing. You can share your screen.
Of course. All right. Well, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I appreciate it. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys here. Let's go into present mode. Okay. Can you see that okay?
Great.
Good. Okay. All right. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. So thank you guys all for joining this evening and coming out to hear my talk. So again, just to reiterate, my name is Lauren Pharr. I am a graduate research assistant at North Carolina State University, pursuing my master's degree in fisheries, wildlife, and conservation biology. So tonight, I just kind of want to talk about preserving our bird species. So basically ways that we can help birds. And so I kind of just wanted to sort of center it around one central theme, which that introduction was lovely. And I can tell that you all are like wonderful and you have a great crew and team of people. So this ties greatly with the conservation efforts. So before I begin, I just want to sort of just talk a little bit more about me and introduce you all to me and sort of how I got my start in this field. So I graduated from Wiggett University with my Bachelor's of Science degree in environmental biology in 2019. But I was not always in this major. I loved nature and I loved animals. However, I would not have found myself, I would not have guessed that I would have found myself in this field. Ever since I was little, growing up, all through high school, I wanted to become a veterinarian because it was kind of the only thing that was exposed to me at the time. Like you saw, TV shows on TV with, the crocodile hunter and everything like that. But I just would always think that that's, oh, like it's fun, like it's TV, you get to see cool animals, but I never really thought that you could make a career out of it. So I wanted to become a veterinarian for a long time. Up until high school, I did an internship at one of my local veterinarian's offices, and I worked there for about 3 years. And I guess, when they say sort of kind of do an internship in what you think your career might be, it's very beneficial because once I did it, it was just something in me, I couldn't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. And don't get me wrong, veterinarians are awesome. Like we love our veterinarians for sure. But for me, I just couldn't see myself doing it. So in high school, everyone's applying to college and I'm sitting here thinking, well, I don't want to be veterinarian anymore. So what else could I possibly be? So I decided to pursue pharmacy. And I tell people that and I get tons of reactions like, wow, that's like on separate ends of the spectrum, but okay. But the reason why I did that was because I was a homebody for one, and two, Wingate University has a great pharmacy program, and it's right, it's right near me. It's about 30 minutes away in my hometown of Waxhaw, North Carolina, which is right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. And so I went there my first 2 years, and my first 2 years were horrible to say the least. I didn't like the courses that I was in. I was struggling tremendously. So my advisor saw that at the time. She saw that and was like, maybe you should go talk to other professors within our biology department and just sort of see if there's something else that you might be interested in. So I went to talk to this one professor who was an ornithologist, and he mostly studied animal behavior. So he put me to work with these birds. They're Chinese blue-breasted quail, and they're like the world's smallest quail. They're also known as king quail or button quail, so their names are interchangeable. And once I started working with these quails, something just lit up, and I was just mesmerized with working with these birds. And then not only that, but I started taking courses in wildlife biology, ecology, zoology, and ornithology. So that was when I found my spark, and I was like, I think this is what I want to do. Like this, I love it. And I just couldn't see myself, going on without doing it. So whatever I ended up doing, I wanted to further my education. So I decided to go to North Carolina State to pursue my master's degree in fisheries, wildlife, and conservation biology. I'm a second-year master's student. I'm on my way to defending my thesis soon, so I'm super excited about that. And also, I'm going to continue on to pursue a PhD. But along with my research, I do urban ecology. So I study anthropogenic effects, specifically urban noise and light pollution, and its effects on adult avian survivorship. But so aside from my research, I also do science communication. I write blog posts, I write articles, I do talks like these in order to, raise awareness and engage the public in what I do. And I honestly, absolutely enjoy it. So Benton found me on social media, and they decided to reach out to me and was like, hey, would you like to be, our monthly blog post person? Like, would you like to write blog posts for us all about birds? And I was like, of course. Like you couldn't have asked for anything better. Like, of course. So hopefully you guys have read some of my blog posts, and I hope you're enjoying the content. And so what I try to do with, that content, as well as these presentations, I try to break down, certain scenarios and things when I talk about different topics in the simplest terms, because as scientists and researchers, we're reading a whole bunch of research papers, we're writing grants, proposals, and we kind of get carried away with our scientific jargon, so to speak. So before I get into my presentation here, I wanted to sort of give you a rundown of basically what it'll be tonight and kind of how I've set it up. So I've taken 4 of my most popular blog posts, and I basically put them into these equations. So I've taken 4 here. So as we can see, birds and rivers, birds and native plants, birds and migratory hazards, and birds and urban noise and light pollution, which is what I'm absolutely a fan of because that's what my research is on. But I basically taken these and I've put them into these equations. So I'll start out with a scenario. So talking about, birds and rivers. Why are rivers beneficial to birds? Why are native plants beneficial to birds, etc. And then I'll sort of go into the problem. So how can these, be impacted, whether it's by us or whether it's by the environment? And then I'll end with an outcome. So basically, when this is impacted, how does it affect our, bird species? And then after that, I'll go into a slide of basically conservation tips, how we as people can contribute to conservation and to preserve nature and our bird species that we all love and enjoy. So keep in mind that I may go back and forth between using the word species and using the word birds. So just keep in mind that if I do say species, I am referring to birds, but also keep in mind that these scenarios can affect many wildlife species and not just birds, but just for tonight, we are here to talk about birds. So just wanted to give you that rundown. And then later on in the presentation, once I get through these 4, I will sort of talk about my research and how I'm contributing to conservation, so to speak. And then at the end, I have some resources that I can definitely send to Heath, and she can probably send them out to you all, just sort of highlighting what I've referenced within this presentation. So I'm sure at the end there will be time for questions. So if you have any, I will try and answer them to the best of my ability. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, anything at all, feel free to ask them at the end. So without further ado here, we'll get into our first scenario. So first, we're going to talk about rivers. So for rivers, as we know, support a very diverse ecosystem. So when we're thinking about rivers, we obviously think about fish, and we think about, shrimp, macroinvertebrates, things like that. All of these, rivers and other bodies of water support, support our bird species, and our birds rely on these rivers for a number of things. So not only for food, but also for water, and they also use rivers for migration. And then you can sort of think of, rivers as attracting insects and things like that. So again, going back to food, birds will use, rivers and stuff for that cause. But then you have this thing called pollution. And so when we think about pollution here, it affects, the ecosystem and water quality. So a lot of people, take the scenario of pollution as, sort of affecting the oxygen quality. So just like we need oxygen to survive, these species in, rivers need oxygen to survive as well. So if we're polluting our rivers, trash, chemicals, everything like that, this can impact our rivers. And not only pollution, but also habitat fragmentation can also impact it, deforestation, as well as river manipulation as well. So what is our end result? Well, it's pretty pretty obvious that, you know, it is detrimental to, again, the species in the river. And in turn, it starts a chain reaction. So these birds who are, you know, living off of this river and using it for food and water and other resources, they will become impacted because that, you know, river ecosystem is becoming impacted by pollution as well as other things which I have named. So what are some solutions? I love using this picture. So as you can see here, this is a picture of a Carolina mad tom catfish, and it is actually a sculpture that some artists here in Raleigh got some inspiration to do. So they were walking around the park and they knew they were going to make this sculpture, but they didn't know what of, like, or they knew they were going to make a sculpture, but they didn't know what of. So they were walking around and they found an abandoned tire, and in the tire they looked and they found a Carolina mad tom catfish, and it sparked something in their mind, and they were like, wow, we can, you know, really say something about this. We can bring awareness to people. So they decided to create this sculpture, and in person, it's absolutely amazing. So this sculpture is made of trash found in Walnut Creek, which is a creek in Raleigh, North Carolina, and all of that is trash. So you can just imagine all of this trash in that river and those species and ecosystems which are being, you know, impacted by it. And it's very eye-opening indeed. So again, you want to be wary of your yard and household practices. You want to dispose of chemicals properly. That's another thing that you want to be wary of as well, because if you don't, it contributes to what we call runoff. And as we know, like from rain and stuff, that water goes into the drains. And then where did the drains lead? To bodies of water, and you get that. So, and you want to also be sure that when you're in things like rivers and creeks and everything, you want to be sure to not displace rocks in rivers, because you are essentially destroying someone's habitat. So I know we all love to wade in the rivers, and there's nothing wrong with that. We love to dip our feet in and, you know, go for a swim, what have you. But, and some of us also love to look for salamanders. So when we do this, you know, we're picking up rocks and we're looking for salamanders and other creatures. And you can imagine, you know, instead of sometimes us putting the rocks back where they came from, we might be chucking them. We might be doing anything else with these rocks besides putting them back where they came from. So if you are looking for that stuff, which there's nothing wrong with it, just be mindful that you are in somebody's habitat. So you want to make sure that you put those rocks back where they came from. And also you can become an advocate and participate in stream, lake, and river cleanups as well. That's a huge thing. Local parks do it all the time. I'm sure, you know, you all, I've written a blog post on it, so I know you guys do it as well. So that's great. So, you know, you want to try and continue to be an advocate to support a healthy river ecosystem. Let's see here. Okay, so next we're going to move on to native plants. So with native plants, we can imagine that they are important to the lifestyles of native bird species. So birds love native plants. Native birds love native plants. And native plants are important for a number of reasons. So again, for food, so seeds and everything like that. And with this, these native plants bring insects, and birds, half of the time, more than not, they feed their nestlings insects. They strive off of an insectivore diet. So you can imagine that all these native plants, you know, they're bringing all these kinds of insects in, and also birds use native plants in terms when they migrate. So they're looking, you know, to when these native plants germinate, when they bloom, et cetera, et cetera. And so they'll, you know, take those native plants and be here, and they'll eat them. And then when it's time to migrate, they'll be on their way. So native plants are important for sure. But what can happen is we can have deforestation and habitat manipulation and habitat fragmentation also, which can affect the dispersal of seeds. So keep in mind that in order for seeds to get around, seeds get around in multiple ways. They can get around by wind, they can get around by animals, so birds who, you know, might eat the seeds and drop them every now and then, and they can also get around by water. So there's many ways that these seeds can get around in order for these native plants to germinate. So if we're manipulating the habitat, we can imagine that, you know, some of these native plant species, they will, you know, not be able to germinate like they used to, and it can lead to invasive species and invasive plants, which we do not want at all. So in turn, as a result, again, new native plants don't get the chance to grow. And this can be very detrimental to birds because this means that their food supply may be lower because they're relying on those native plants to attract insects for them to, bring back to their nestlings. So again, it creates another chain reaction, so to speak. So what can you do? How can you conserve native plants? So I took two pictures here, the Oregon monkeyflower and the yellow-rumped warbler, which I understand is two native species to Oregon and the Willamette Valley. So what you can do is simply promote native vegetation at any time. So you can create a native habitat with native plants for a ton of bird species. And not only birds, but again, these native plants will attract insects. So, caterpillars, butterflies, you name it. These can attract those insects and will be beneficial for your bird species. So some native plants, include sunflowers, elderberries, oaks, pines, cherries, and birches. Different species of birds love different things, but there's plenty of resources out there if you, look up native gardens or, want to make native gardens, et cetera, et cetera. There's plenty of things out there to refer to, but you also want to make sure that whatever you plant, it's, native and not non-native, because again, we don't want to promote non-native species and invasive species, so to speak. We just still want to keep in line with that nativeness for our birds. So the third scenario here I have is migration. So with migration, birds seek food and nesting locations when both become low. So essentially, why do birds migrate? Well, when it gets colder and they're, going through all of their resources, down here, then they will migrate south and basically, they'll basically get, more resources in the south and sort of, replenish themselves. That's the word I'm looking for. Sort of replenish themselves. So with migration, what can happen? So we have these things, migratory hazards here. So things such as windows can be a huge migratory hazard. Windows and buildings, as well as these wind turbines. And I believe I have a link in the resources here. If I don't, it should be in one of my blog posts. But with these wind turbines and windows, buildings, anything like that, any man-made, sort of things like this can be a lethal barrier for migrating birds. And these are some numbers actually from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. 140,000 to 500,000 bird deaths per year are caused by wind turbines. And it's a big number. It's really, really huge. So in turn, again, this can be deadly to, native species. And it's, it ends just like that. It can be really deadly for these native bird species. And it is important that these species migrate because again, they want to replenish on their food and they want to have, nesting locations and habitats and things like that. So what can you do? You can treat your windows. So you can apply things such as decals, you can apply curtains, you can apply tempera paint, and even insect screens. I have tried decals. So far they have worked for me, but I haven't tried any of the other things yet, but I have tried decals. And so far decals seem to be working. As far as the wind turbines, which is the resource that I was mentioning earlier, some scientists did a study, and it's pretty recent, I believe, and they actually found that if they painted one of the ends of the wind turbines black, it actually decreased migratory hazards in birds, which I found was really, really interesting. So again, I think I have that resource. If I don't, I will be sure to send it along so you guys can read up on it, but it is pretty cool. So last but not least here, we have urbanization. So specifically when I talk about urbanization, I talk about noise and light pollution because that is what I know best. So we have birds who inhabit urban and suburban areas. And when we think about urban and suburban areas, we think about a lot of buildings, a lot of traffic, a lot of noise, a lot of light, which we are causing. Unfortunately, we are one of the sources of the problem. And you have to realize, because some people are like, well, why don't the birds leave? Why don't they just move on somewhere else? Well, some do. and some don't. Some do thrive in urban habitats, and while others don't. And you have to keep in mind that I always tell people, to think about it like this, is that they were here first. They were here first, as well as other animals. And here we come building all of our buildings and, all of this construction going on, etc. So they're just like, all right, well, I'm just, going to have to basically find ways to survive. So again, we have noise coming from our cars, and we have lights coming from lampposts and such like that. So this can create pollution, and this can in turn affect birds. So ways that it can affect birds, there are plenty. So this pollution can affect bird behavior. It can affect their growth, their development. It can affect migration, etc. You name it, this pollution can affect it. And again, when I tell this story, a lot of people are like, oh, wow, I did not know that. But it is happening, and it is here. So ways that we can reduce this and help. So specifically with noise, really like officials and things like that, they government officials and things like that, they kind of have a voice in this more than we do, I guess, because noise is kind of hard to talk about because there's really not much we as people can do with noise besides, lower our volumes and all that stuff. But I mean, in terms of what we see on highways and stuff, we see noise reducing barriers. And there's also before, in some states and in some areas, before building any kinds of buildings or any kinds of neighborhoods and things like that, they'll do environmental assessments in order to assess for noise and just make sure that, the noise is at a certain level. But light pollution is a totally different story. There are many ways that we can help with light pollution. So we can install motion sensor lights. So instead of lights that stay on all the time, we can install motion sensor ones that go on and off. We can fix our outdoor fixtures in order to minimize glare, which contributes to sky glow, which is pictured there to the right. And then we can also join and contribute to science conducted by researchers through, it's going back and forth, which I'll explain in my next slide because it's a little bit more relevant, but community science or citizen science. So basically individuals, everyday individuals can contribute to science conducted by researchers and scientists. In order to, contribute to this research of light pollution, and I think sometimes noise, but mostly light pollution. But it leads me into how do I help birds? So I help birds in two ways. So the first way is, again, citizen or community science. I know in order to make it more, inclusive, people are starting to use the word community more, which I totally agree with. And it just depends on certain areas. I know down here, we still use citizen science, but I think we're gradually making that change. But a lot of people are used to us using the word citizen science, but I did include community science as well. So, this citizen science project is called Neighborhood Nest Watch, which you'll see to the right. And this project is based out of the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And basically what they do is they have everyday individuals help them with data collection from these different focal species, from these different bird species, in order to allow them to answer questions about kind of reproductive behaviors and overall success in urban environments. So with my research specifically, it includes citizen science. So in my research, I took some of the data from the Citizen Science Project. One of the lead scientists is one of my collaborators for my thesis. And I took that data and that's how I assessed if urban noise and light pollution is affecting adult avian survivorship. So again, all of that data was, collected not only by scientists and researchers, but also individuals. And that data can help us answer, questions from reproductive success to reproductive behaviors and so on and so forth in urban areas. And the other way that I help birds is with bird banding. So with bird banding, scientists and researchers collect high quality data that build a strong and reliable data set to address specific scientific questions, contribute to conservation efforts, and contribute to information about the natural history of birds. So how I got into bird banding, it's a really cool story. for my first initial thesis at NC State, it involved bird banding and misnetting in urban areas. So I was going to have, again, and it was citizen science, just like with Neighborhood Nest Watch. And I was going to go out into urban areas, basically people's backyards, which was going to be totally cool, and misnet and band northern cardinals. Those are my focal species. But then COVID hit, and the pandemic just changed everybody's research, and everybody's research went to a halt for a moment. And I just felt like, okay, I just maybe need to pursue something else, because with a master's, you only have 2 years, and it didn't look like the pandemic was letting up anytime soon. So that's when I decided to pursue Neighborhood Nest Watch. And thankfully, they had a 20-year data set that I was able to use in order to answer my question, which was totally, totally awesome. But going back to bird banding is very, very important. So it allows you to, again, answer those same kind of questions. It allows you to answer everything from, migratory behaviors, stopover habitats. It allows you to examine a bird up close, and you get to, take morphological measurements, and you even get to take physiological measurements if you need that. And those can tell you a whole bunch of things when it comes to birds and, conservation and everything like that. So bird banding and citizen science are just 2 ways that I use with my research in order to help birds. So these were the resources that I was talking about. And again, like I said, I can pass them on to Heath, and she can certainly share them with you guys. So just my author archives. So basically all of the blog posts that I've written for Benton Soil and Water Conservation District would be under this tab, basically under my name. The Mad Tom catfish sculpture. This came from a story in a magazine here in Raleigh, Plastic Everywhere. It's a really interesting story. I really suggest you check it out, because it's pretty awesome. And then I provided some links to some citizen science projects. So Neighborhood Nest Watch, the bird banding and project with and individuals helping out with that, because it also includes bird banding as well, which is pretty cool. Dark Sky Meter and Globe at Night are 2 citizen science projects that you can also contribute to. And they look at light pollution, and they allow you to take measurements out in your yard, and you submit them, and it just tells scientists and researchers all these different kinds of things. So I'll end here with my information, and again, I'll give it to Heath as well. But just my website, my email if you want to reach out to me. And if you're on social media, feel free to follow me on Instagram and Twitter. These are my 2 main science communication platforms. And you'll also see some bird photography. I am no professional photographer in the slightest, but you'll see some bird photography on there, and just me promoting my science communication work and my research as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you learned a lot. I hope I broke it down for you too in some simple ways that lay people can understand. But of course, I can see you guys are just fabulous. So so you probably got it just like that. But yeah, but that's it. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for your presentation, Lauren. That was awesome. That was so informative. And we have a little bit of time for questions, but not a lot of time. So we could probably take a few questions right now if anybody has questions. I don't know how I will know if we have questions. Do you know how you can either unmute yourself and just ask the question?
Mm-hmm.
I think that might be the best way to do it right now.
So my name is Maisel Governor. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Good. So I live on Thornton Lake, which is in North Albany. And it would appear that I'm not quite stable, because I have been having a terrible time with my neighbors who love to put lights on their house. And so you can no longer look about at night at the lake, because there are shining lights in your face. It's not because people are out there, but because there are all these lights. Then, as if that wasn't terrible enough, there's now Christmas lights that don't get turned off at all the entire season. They're still on right now. And so I was thinking, if I could access some articles and simply put them at people's front door and have them say, I never thought of this or
Mhm.
something. It's a difficult situation because I'm a person of color, and there is a feeling here that I don't belong on this lake because these people have either been here very long, but they have not been longer than me. I'm actually the person, there's only one other person who's been here longer.
Mhm.
And so I thought maybe just leaving information at their door as would be a way to get people to say, I never thought about this one. What do you
Mhm.
think?
No, I think that is an excellent idea. I do know for my again, my initial project that I was going to do, we were going to do the exact same thing. So whenever we went out to people's yards, we actually had a pamphlet that we made, basically just going over not only what we were, what we were going to do in your yard, but basically just some links to articles and everything like that that people could look up to learn about, noise and light pollution. Because again, a lot of people don't know about it, and they don't think think that it can be detrimental, but it really can. So I can definitely, because I have a ton of articles. I can send them to Heath, and Heath can send them to you, or she can give me your email, and I can certainly send you some great articles and some links if you want to pass that along. But I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, so Heath knows my email address, and
Okay.
you can send the information to her, or
Sure.
she can send you my email address. Quite frankly, I care a lot about the birds. I mean, people
Yes.
tell me, how many more bird feeders are you putting up at my house? I can't have enough. And I have some really elegant ones that are impressive as heck. But
That's great.
I just decided, this is really quite simple, that if light was driving me nuts, what was it doing to animals who don't expect light at all?
Right. I completely agree with you 100%. So I can definitely, like I said, I can definitely send you some links your way, and it can hopefully open their eyes. And I'll be honest, sometimes some people, they'll be like, oh yeah, and then just be like, eh. like there's some like you who care, and then like I said, there's others where they're just like, yeah, no. So but again, I can totally definitely send you those links for sure.
Thank you so much, Lauren.
You are so welcome. Thank you for that.
Is there any other question for Lauren before we have to break it up for the evening?
Yes, so I see one in the chat here.
Great.
How did I first become connected with Benton Soil Water Conservation? Yeah, so it was actually through, I believe, it was actually during Black Birders Week. I don't know if you guys have heard about that week at all, but basically Black Birders Week was a week to highlight Black and minority people in the natural science field. So anybody, from wildlife biology to ornithology, again, anything like that was in natural sciences, it highlighted Black and minority people, and it sparked the whole movement. And it was really, really awesome. And Laura Brown, who was here before I got to meet Heath, who is lovely, she reached out to me, and she had read some of my articles that I had written during Black Birders Week, and she had asked me if I wanted to be a guest blogger for a year with Benton. So I was totally stoked about that. So that's how. So she found me, and I'm super grateful to her. So thank you, Laura. Thank you.
We're super grateful too. That's great. Are there any others? Let me see. I don't have, the chat isn't staying open on my screen. Looks good. Awesome. Yeah.
None on my end, but I'm glad you all loved it. I see all your comments. So you were so welcome. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
that was great. Thank you so much. Holly, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, well, that was a quick hour. First, thanks so much to Lauren. It was really great to have you with us. And do check out her blogs on our website. There's some really, really cool information there, lots of resources. Thanks to everyone for attending. I really hope that we can meet in person next year. I guess the good thing, you missed all the good food that we usually have at our annual meeting, but we didn't have to remind you about getting your car out of the garage this year. Anyway, thank you so much for coming, and stay safe. Check out our website, check out our annual report that's on the website, and all our other great links. So thanks to everyone for coming. For the board meeting, we're going to take a 5-minute break. Fade, or do you want to take more than 5 minutes?
5 is fine.
Okay. So we're going to sign off. Thanks again for everybody who came to the meeting, and we'll start the board meeting in 5 minutes.